The patrol car's lights weren't flashing. That should have been Marcus Washington's first clue. The three men who stepped out weren't real police officers. But by the time he realized the truth, his 7-year-old daughter was already crying in her mother's arms, and he was face down on the scorching asphalt of his own driveway. They had badges, they had uniforms, they had the audacity to put their hands on a decorated Delta Force commander in front of his family. What they didn't have was any idea who they were dealing with. This is the story of how fake authority met real consequences, and how one family's nightmare exposed a neighborhood's darkest secret.
Marcus Washington had purchased the house on Maple Ridge Drive exactly 8 months ago. The two-story colonial with the wraparound porch wasn't just a house, it was proof. Proof that the kid from South Memphis who joined the Army at 18 could build something solid. Proof that 15 years of service, 3 combat deployments, and countless classified missions meant something beyond medals tucked away in a drawer. At 6'3" and 270 pounds, Marcus knew exactly how people saw him. His wife, Nicole, often joked that he looked like he could bench press a sedan, which wasn't far from the truth. But in their quiet suburban neighborhood, 30 miles outside of Nashville, he was just the friendly guy who waved from his lawnmower and always had his trash cans positioned perfectly on collection day. Nicole was finishing her nursing degree at Vanderbilt while working night shifts at the county hospital. Their daughter, Zoe, was in 2nd grade at Maple Ridge Elementary, where she'd already made the honor roll twice. This was the American dream they'd worked for, the reward for sacrifice, discipline, and bleeding for a country that didn't always bleed back. The Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association had sent exactly 1 letter since they moved in. It arrived in their 3rd week, a passive-aggressive note printed on cream-colored cardstock about maintaining community aesthetic standards. Marcus had frowned at the language, but dismissed it. Every HOA had rules. This was just bureaucracy. What he didn't know was that the Willowbrook Heights HOA was different. President Gregory Hartman had run the association for 6 years with an iron fist wrapped in country club politeness. His board consisted of 4 other families, all white, all original residents from when the development was built in 1987. They'd watched the neighborhood change, their word, with barely concealed contempt. First the Patels moved in 3 years ago, then the Nguyen's, then the Washingtons. Hartman had started the Neighborhood Security Initiative 8 months prior, coincidentally right around the time the Washingtons closed on their house. He'd hired 2 men, Carl Braddock and Shane Vickers, both former security guards with dubious employment histories. He'd given them uniforms purchased online, navy blue tactical pants, black polo shirts with embroidered badges, and official-looking ID cards that said Willowbrook Heights Community Police. They weren't police. They had no authority, no jurisdiction, no legal standing whatsoever. But in their Ford Explorer with tinted windows and a magnetic light bar, they looked official enough to fool most people. That was the point. Marcus noticed them for the first time in his 2nd month on Maple Ridge. The white SUV had crawled past his house 3 times in one afternoon while he was installing a basketball hoop in the driveway. When he waved, neither occupant waved back. Nicole had seen them too, always driving slowly, always watching. "Probably just neighborhood watch," Marcus had said, though something in his gut disagreed. "They give me the creeps," Nicole replied. "Neighborhood watch doesn't need fake badges and matching outfits." But life was busy. Marcus was still processing out from active duty, transitioning to contract work with a private security firm. Nicole was drowning in clinicals. Zoe needed help with her science project. The suspicious patrol car became background noise, something weird but not immediately threatening. Until the afternoon of August 17th. Marcus had taken a rare day off. Nicole was sleeping after a double shift. Zoe was in second grade at Maple Ridge Elementary, where she'd already made the honor roll twice. This was the American dream they'd worked for. The reward for sacrifice, discipline, and bleeding for a country that didn't always bleed back. The Willowbrook Heights Homeowners Association had sent exactly one letter since they moved in. It arrived in their third week. A passive-aggressive note printed on cream-colored cardstock about maintaining community aesthetic standards. Marcus had frowned at the language but dismissed it. Every HOA had rules. This was just bureaucracy.
"Afternoon, sir. We need to see some identification." Marcus straightened up slowly, dropping the hose into the grass. His training kicked in automatically. Assess the threat, identify exits, protect civilians. But this wasn't Kabul. This was his front yard in Suburban, Tennessee on a Saturday afternoon. I'm sorry. Identification for what? Marcus kept his voice level, non-confrontational. The two men were both white, mid-30s, with the swagger of people who'd been given just enough authority to be dangerous. The taller one, name tag reading Braddock, had his thumbs hooked into his belt loops. The stockier one, Vickers, stood slightly back and to the left, classic flanking position. "We've received complaints about suspicious activity at this address," Braddock said, his tone flat and rehearsed. "We need to verify you have permission to be on this property." Marcus blinked. The absurdity of the statement took a moment to register. Permission? I live here. This is my house. That's what we need to verify, sir. Vickers stepped forward now, pulling out a small notebook. If you could just provide ID and proof of residency, we can clear this up quickly. Something was deeply wrong. Marcus's eyes dropped to their badges. Cheap metal. The kind you could buy in bulk from a costume website. No department name, just Community Police in embossed letters. Their belts had handcuffs, but no firearms, no radios, no body cameras. These weren't real cops. Who exactly are you? Marcus asked, crossing his arms over his chest. What department are you with? Willowbrook Heights Neighborhood Security, sir. We work directly with the HOA to maintain community safety standards. Braddock's jaw tightened. Now we've asked nicely, we need to see identification. I don't have to show you anything. Marcus kept his voice calm, but his stance shifted subtly. Weight balanced, ready to move. You're not police officers. You have no legal authority to demand identification from me on my own property. Braddock's face flushed red. Sir, if you don't comply, we'll have no choice but to contact actual law enforcement for trespassing. Trespassing? Marcus's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. On my own property that I purchased? That I pay a mortgage on? A door slammed across the street. Mrs. Chen from number 47 stood on her porch, phone in hand. 2 houses down, the Goldsteins had come outside. Marcus could feel the audience gathering, and he knew how this looked. A large black man getting confrontational with uniformed officers. He'd seen this movie before. He knew how it ended. Look, there's clearly been a misunderstanding, Marcus said, forcing his voice back to neutral. Let me go inside and get my driver's license and the deed to the house. Will that satisfy you? You'll stay right here, sir. Vickers moved to block the path to the front door. We don't go inside until we verify your identity. Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to physically remove these frauds from his property, but he'd been trained better than that. He'd led men into combat, made split-second life-and-death decisions under fire. He could handle 2 wannabe cops on a power trip. I'm calling my wife, Marcus said, pulling his phone from his pocket. Sir, put the phone down! Braddock's hand moved to his belt, to the handcuffs.
"It's a phone," Marcus said slowly, holding it up so they could see the screen. "I'm calling my wife, who's in the house. She's a nurse. She works at County Hospital. She can verify. Put it down, now." The shout came from behind him. Marcus spun to see a third man emerging from a second vehicle, a silver sedan that had pulled up unnoticed. This one was older, maybe 55, with gray hair and a polo shirt bearing the same fake badge. Gregory Hartman, though Marcus didn't know his name yet. "Gentlemen, what's the situation?" Hartman's voice dripped with false concern, like a principal approaching a schoolyard fight. "Subject refuses to provide identification or proof he has legal right to be at this address," Braddock reported, suddenly standing straighter. "That's a complete lie. I've been calm this entire time. I told them this is my house." "Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down." Hartman held up both hands in a placating gesture that made Marcus's blood pressure spike. "We're just trying to keep this neighborhood safe. Surely you understand that. There have been multiple break-ins in the area, and when residents report seeing unfamiliar individuals—" "Unfamiliar?" The word came sharp. "I've lived here for 8 months. I've waved to half this street. The only thing unfamiliar about me is that I don't look like everyone else on this block." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Hartman's expression didn't change, but his eyes went cold. "Sir, no one is accusing you of anything, but your refusal to cooperate is making this situation unnecessarily difficult." The front door opened. Nicole appeared on the porch in her scrubs, hair still messy from sleep. Her eyes went wide, taking in the scene. Her husband, surrounded by 3 uniformed men, neighbors watching from their yards, tension thick enough to cut. "Marcus? What's going on?" Her voice was tight with concern. "Ma'am, please stay inside," Hartman called out. "Excuse me?" Nicole's nursing instincts kicked in. She'd dealt with aggressive patients, unhinged family members, and hospital administrators on power trips. 3 fake cops didn't intimidate her. "This is my house. That's my husband. Someone better tell me what's happening right now." "These gentlemen claim to be with the HOA," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Braddock. "They want to see proof that we live here." Nicole's expression shifted from confused to furious in half a second. "You're joking. Please, tell me you're joking." "Ma'am, if you could please provide—" "I will provide nothing except a call to our attorney." Nicole pulled out her own phone. "Marcus, come inside, now." "Ma'am, he's not free to go until—" Marcus took 1 step toward his porch. That was all it took. Braddock grabbed his arm. "Sir, stop right there." The physical contact was the line. Marcus had been grabbed before by insurgents, by suspects, by enemy combatants trying to kill him. Every fiber of his Delta Force training screamed at him to execute a disarm, a takedown, an immediate neutralization of the threat. His body moved before his mind caught up, muscle memory from 10,000 hours of hand-to-hand combat training. He twisted his arm, breaking Braddock's grip with a technique that could have shattered the man's wrist if he had applied full force. Braddock stumbled backward with a yelp of surprise. "Do not touch me!" Marcus's voice was thunder. "He assaulted me!" Braddock shouted, and suddenly Vickers was there, grabbing at Marcus's other arm. Hartman was yelling something about citizen's arrest. Nicole was screaming from the porch. And then Marcus heard the sound that turned his blood to ice. Zoe's voice, crying, "Daddy!" His 7-year-old daughter was running up the sidewalk from the neighbor's house, her birthday party dress covered in cake frosting, tears streaming down her face as she watched 3 men trying to restrain her father. Time fractured. Marcus stopped resisting immediately, letting his arms go slack even as handcuffs bit into his wrists. Nicole ran down the porch steps and grabbed Zoe, pulling her close. The little girl sobbed into her mother's shoulder while neighbors pulled out phones recording every second. "You're under citizen's arrest for assault and trespassing," Hartman announced, breathing hard. "We're holding you here until real police arrive." Marcus stood there, hands cuffed behind his back, in his own driveway, watching his daughter cry. He'd survived 3 tours in Afghanistan. He'd earned a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. He'd led missions that saved American lives and eliminated high-value targets. And now he was handcuffed on his own property by 3 men with fake badges while his family watched in horror. The humiliation was crushing. The rage was nuclear. But Marcus Washington hadn't survived 15 years in special operations by losing his cool. So he stood perfectly still, locked eyes with Gregory Hartman, and said 6 words in a voice that promised consequences. "You have no idea who I am."
The actual police arrived 14 minutes later. 14 minutes that felt like 14 hours. Marcus remained silent, standing with his hands cuffed behind his back, while his daughter sobbed and his wife made 3 phone calls. One to their attorney, one to the local news, and one to Marcus's former commanding officer at Fort Bragg. Officer Jennifer Park of the Nashville Metro Police stepped out of her patrol car and immediately knew something was wrong. She saw the handcuffs, the fake badges, the crowd of recording neighbors, and the rage barely contained behind Marcus Washington's eyes. "Someone want to tell me what's happening here?" Park's hand instinctively rested near her weapon as she assessed the scene. "Officer, thank God!" Hartman stepped forward, extending his hand like they were at a networking event. "Gregory Hartman, Willowbrook HOA president. We've apprehended a trespasser who became violent when questioned. He assaulted one of our security personnel." Park ignored the hand. Her eyes moved to Marcus. "Sir, what's your name?" "Master Sergeant Marcus Washington, U.S. Army, retired. This is my house. I live here with my wife and daughter. These men are not police officers. They have no authority. They assaulted me on my own property and handcuffed me in front of my child." Park's expression shifted. She looked at Braddock, at the handcuffs, at the cheap badges. "Who put those restraints on him?" "We performed a legal citizen's arrest," Braddock said quickly. "He assaulted me when we tried to verify his identity." "Show me your credentials." Park's tone had gone from cautious to suspicious. "All 3 of you." What followed was a masterclass in watching false authority crumble. Braddock couldn't produce a security license. Vickers admitted they had no law enforcement training. Hartman tried to claim HOA authority granted them special powers that didn't exist in any state statute. Park called for backup. She removed Marcus's handcuffs personally, apologizing 3 times. She separated the 3 men and took statements while 2 additional units arrived. But the damage was done. Marcus's wrists had deep red marks from the cuffs. Zoe refused to let go of her mother's hand, her eyes puffy from crying. Neighbors whispered and recorded. And Marcus Washington, decorated combat veteran, Delta Force operator, a man who'd faced down enemy fighters without flinching, stood in his own driveway feeling something he'd never felt in war: complete and total humiliation. Nicole approached Officer Park while Marcus knelt down to hold his daughter. "I want to press charges: assault, false imprisonment, harassment, whatever applies." "Ma'am, I understand your frustration," Park started. "Do you?" Nicole's voice cracked. "Do you understand what it feels like to watch your husband, who served this country for 15 years, get treated like a criminal on his own property? To watch your daughter see her father handcuffed? Do you understand that?" Park had no answer, because the truth was written in the faces of everyone on that street. This wouldn't have happened to the Goldsteins. It wouldn't have happened to the Chens. It wouldn't have happened to any of the other families on Maple Ridge Drive. It happened to the Washingtons because Marcus was a large black man and Hartman's neighborhood security was code for racial profiling with badges. A sleek BMW pulled up to the curb. A woman in a sharp business suit stepped out, briefcase in hand. "Master Sergeant Washington,
I'm Keisha Morris, the attorney your wife contacted. Don't say another word to anyone except me." Behind her came a news van with Channel 7's logo, then another. The arrest of 3 fake cops illegally restraining a decorated veteran on his own property was the kind of story that wrote itself. Hartman's face had gone from flushed to pale. Vickers and Braddock stood off to the side, both clearly realizing the magnitude of their mistake. They'd thought they were intimidating a random black guy washing his car. They had actually assaulted a special operations soldier whose military record would make their charges look like a civil rights lawsuit waiting to explode. But the real climax came when Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Colonel David Reyes, his former CO at Delta Force. "Marcus, I got Nicole's message. Where are you right now?" "In my driveway, sir. Handcuffs just came off." "Send me your address. I'm mobilizing 15 retired operators from your unit. We'll be there in 90 minutes. Nobody, and I mean nobody, puts hands on one of my men without consequences." Marcus looked at his daughter, still crying. He looked at his wife, fierce and exhausted. He looked at Hartman, finally understanding that he'd kicked a hornet's nest. "Sir, I appreciate it, but let the system handle this." "The system failed you today, Marcus. We don't let that slide." And in that moment, Marcus understood. This wasn't over. This was just beginning.
The legal consequences came swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, Gregory Hartman, Carl Braddock, and Shane Vickers faced criminal charges, including assault, false imprisonment, and impersonating law enforcement officers. The Willowbrook Heights HOA's insurance policy didn't cover criminal actions by board members, which meant Hartman was personally liable for damages. His attorney told him to expect a civil lawsuit in the 7 figures. The HOA held an emergency meeting. Hartman was removed from the board by unanimous vote of the remaining members, people who suddenly remembered they'd always had concerns about the security initiative, but had been too afraid to speak up. The neighborhood security program was dissolved immediately. Braddock and Vickers lost their contracts and faced criminal records that would make future employment nearly impossible. But for Marcus Washington, the wounds went deeper than legal victories could heal. Zoe developed nightmares. She'd wake up crying, asking why those men hurt her daddy. Nicole found her drawing pictures in school, stick figures of her father with his hands behind his back, crayon tears on his face. The second-grade teacher called to express concern. Nicole made an appointment with a child therapist. Marcus struggled too, though he'd never admit it. The humiliation of being handcuffed in front of his family, the rage he'd felt but couldn't express, the knowledge that his daughter's innocence had been shattered, it all sat in his chest like a stone. He'd faced enemy combatants without fear, but facing his daughter's questions about why those men thought Daddy was bad, that broke something inside him. The media coverage was explosive. Local news became national news. Decorated veteran assaulted by fake HOA police ran on CNN, Fox, MSNBC. The Washington family's driveway became a symbol of a larger truth, that for Black Americans, even military service, even home ownership, even following every rule and checking every box doesn't guarantee protection from racial profiling and prejudice. 3 weeks after the incident, Colonel Reyes made good on his promise. 15 retired Delta Force operators showed up at the Washington house on a Saturday morning. They didn't come for revenge. They came with tools. They spent the day building a massive playground in the backyard, swings, a climbing wall, monkey bars. They wanted Zoe to have good memories in this house, to associate home with safety instead of trauma. Marcus stood in his backyard, watching his brothers-in-arms laugh with his daughter as she tested the new swings. Nicole squeezed his hand. "She's going to be okay," Nicole whispered. "We're all going to be okay." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. The civil lawsuit settled out of court 6 months later. The number was confidential, but it was enough for Marcus to establish a legal defense fund for other families targeted by discriminatory HOA practices.
He partnered with the NAACP and the ACLU to create the Homeowner Protection Initiative, offering free legal representation to people facing harassment in their own neighborhoods. Hartman lost his house to bankruptcy. Braddock and Vickers lost 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. The criminal records would follow them forever. But the real impact wasn't in the punishments or the settlements. It was in the conversations that started happening on suburban streets across America. The Willowbrook Heights incident became a case study in community colleges and law schools. News articles dissected how a simple HOA board could weaponize authority against families of color. Forums debated the fine line between neighborhood safety and racial profiling. Marcus Washington never wanted to be a symbol. He just wanted to mow his lawn and help his daughter with homework. But sometimes history chooses you, and you have to decide whether to shrink from it or stand up. He chose to stand. A year after the incident, Marcus testified before the Tennessee State Legislature in support of a bill restricting HOA enforcement powers and requiring explicit training on civil rights and fair housing laws. Zoe sat in the gallery with Nicole, watching her father speak truth to power the same way he'd served his country, with honor, discipline, and an unshakable belief that justice matters. The bill passed. Today, the Washingtons still live on Maple Ridge Drive. The neighbors wave, now, genuinely, warmly. The playground in the backyard stays busy with Zoe and her friends. And on the mailbox, beneath their name, Marcus added a small plaque. Home of the free because of the brave. But every time Marcus pulls into his driveway, he remembers. He remembers the humiliation, the rage, the sound of his daughter crying. And he uses that memory as fuel. Fuel to help other families, to change unjust systems, to make sure no decorated veteran or hardworking family ever has to face fake cops on their own property again. This story raises uncomfortable questions we all need to answer. How many neighborhoods have their own version of Gregory Hartman? How many families face harassment in silence? How many children have watched their parents humiliated for the crime of existing in a space where they weren't expected? Share this story. Talk about it with your family, your neighbors, your community leaders, because change doesn't happen through silence. It happens when we collectively decide that enough is enough. Drop your thoughts below. Let's keep this conversation going, because Marcus Washington's fight isn't over. It's just beginning.